you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate, and Danielle's actually not joining me this week. She's had a brutal week at work, and she's tired and went to bed almost 2 hours ago at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this one by myself because we have a listener question, and this one speaks to my heart. So I'm going to go ahead and cover it because I don't think Danielle will be able to add much to this one because she doesn't live in this world. And I'll explain what that means in just a second. But before I continue, I just want to thank all of you who have left reviews for the show. It really has helped grow the show. We've seen tremendous growth as far as questions coming in, reviews, and just overall downloads. So we appreciate your support. And please, if you have not already done so, leave a review. Again, it helps grow the show. It helps us give you more content, helps us kind of think about other things and situations for what we do. Also, if you have given us a review, or even if you haven't, the best way to spread the show or to grow the show is to spread it by word of mouth. So if you could tell a friend or a family member, we'd greatly appreciate that as well. We're just trying to make sure we can reach as many people as possible and hopefully help other people budget as a couple as well. So let's go ahead into this listener question. It's a very short, to the point question. It's literally 2 sentences, and it's perfect because it speaks to my heart. So the listener goes, "My husband and I are big impulse spenders. How do we change our habits?" And you came to the right person for this one. Again, Danielle's not going to add a lot. She's not an impulsive person. I am. So I can speak to this, and I can kind of talk about how I've dealt with that through a number of different factors. And hopefully we can find one that works for you. All right, so let's go ahead in here. And to start off with, I want to say I'm an impulse spender with a limit. And I'll explain what that means here over the next little bit. But really, there's a reason why I say I'm impulse, but I'm not a true no-holds-bar impulse spender. So to start off with, as a general overview, our budget is composed of 2 things. Money that we need to spend money on, like our mortgage, utilities, car, whatever. And then there's a portion of our budget that's dedicated to things that we don't need, like going out, personal budgets, those type of items. So just to break down, we have those 2 basic areas. Once we get into that, we give ourselves about $200 a month to spend on whatever we want, pretty much without question. So Danielle has $200 and I have $200. Generally, I spend that $200 on tech gear that I don't really need and lunches that I get from school. And Danielle usually spends it on clothes or video games. Now, Danielle's very, very good at controlling herself, and she only really gets what she truly, truly wants. I don't know how she does this, how she has a self-control for that, but she does not really impulse spend. She feels guilty spending money. I think that's part of it, but she really only gets what exactly she wants. She does not impulse spend at all. Whereas I, on the other hand, really go through most of my budget within the first week or so. So that money is in my pocket and is out of my pocket, or should I say my credit card, but we track everything. So we have that. Today is the 19th when I'm recording this of September. And I have, out of that $200, I have $25 left in my budget, and I'm going away in 2 weekends, which means that I need money for that. So I have $25 to eat with over the weekend, which is going to be a fun adventure, but I'll figure it out. So I'm a really big impulse buyer. If I kind of go through something and I've thought about something for a while and I think it's a good deal, I'll usually get it. In fact, today I saw a great deal. I've been wanting really badly to get a USB-C to Lightning cable. Now that sounds dumb, but basically I have a charger that fits one plug and I want to plug my phone because it can charge it a lot faster than I currently can. And the cable I had was $10 to do that, which are usually like $15. So it's a good sale when you think about it in percentages. The problem is I only have $25 left, and I know I have an expenditure coming up. So unfortunately, I couldn't get that, or fortunately, depending on your point of view. But I decided not to get that. And that's kind of where I'm at with things. Because I know I have a set spending limit that I can't go out of, that impulse, no matter what the desire for it is, I have to kind of bow down to that budget. It's not something that I can kind of take for granted or just push aside. That's something that my spouse and I have agreed to, and we take that very seriously. There's a lot of things that we don't take seriously in a relationship, and there's things that we take very, very seriously in our relationship. And sticking to the budget is one that we've decided as a couple is very important to us. So we really make sure that we go through and stick to that budget. And I make sure that I don't go out of mine, because if I do, I'm going to have an upset wife, and then I'm going to have an upset life, as the saying goes. So I don't really want to go through that experience. I want to make sure that I can do things. I will also say that if I know I have a larger expenditure coming up, I can control myself if I need to. So if I had, let's say I wanted something that was $100 and it was the second of the month and there was a good sale on something else and it was $80, I'm probably not going to get it, because I know that my budget's going to be eaten up by that $100 a little bit later in the month. So I do have some self-control when it comes to that, but that's because I've dedicated myself to making sure I stay in budget. And that's one of the ways that you can go through and kind of do things, is dedicate yourself to a set of rules. And my rule is that I just don't spend over my budget limit. But whatever rule you set up, if you dedicate yourself to it, it can help you break the habit. And speaking of habits, it's a really good thing that you recognize being an impulse spender as a habit. A lot of people I talk to just kind of go and spend money and don't really think about it, don't have any thought behind it. They just do it, and then they have to figure out how to pay it off, or they just do it. But recognizing that spending money can be a habit, especially if it's impulsively or without thought, is a really good first step. So that tells me right away that you're ready to change. I've had that before in my life. I still am an impulse spender, but at the same time, I am an impulse spender that knows the limits that we can go through. So I have both ends of that, but I clearly see the kind of the end kind of gateway there. So I'm going to go over a couple things that I've thought of that I think really will help any impulse spender, myself included. I follow these exact steps because it just helps me tremendously in being able to take care of stuff. So let's go with number one. The first thing that I practice is I don't buy something right away. If there's something that I see and I really want it, I'll wait a day or two. A lot of the times, the thought of purchasing something is enough for your brain to enjoy itself. And what I mean by that is there's literally a release of dopamine that you get from buying something, especially if you're an impulse spender. You're literally drugging your brain into an enjoyment kind of setting. And if you can release that dopamine by just putting it on hold and saying, I'll come back later, your brain still gets a little bit of that dopamine, so it looks for that positive kind of feedback loop. But when you go back to come to it in a few days, you usually find the desire or that dopamine release is not the same, because it's not going to be the same hit on your brain as what it was previously. So that kind of trains your brain to start thinking, I can wait, or I can just look at something, think about it, and it goes through, and you kind of get the better end of things right away. So you get the effect of buying something without the consequence of it. That's something that I totally have trained myself into, and it honestly works. There's lots of stuff that I would love to purchase, and I think about purchasing. I go up, look at it, touch it, all that stuff, and then I'm like, I have to physically come back. And if I do that, then it means I really do want it. But if not, I don't have that feeling of, or that need of loss that could happen there. So that's for me, but try it and see how it works. My second one would be set limits and mean it. We set a very strict $200 a month for each of us as fun money, or whatever you want to call it. We call it our personal budget. Stick to that. No matter what, do not go over it. It's a feeling of discipline. There's a feeling of accomplishment when you do that. And if you really set that strict limit of a rule with yourself, the guilt that you'll feel for going over that will far outweigh that good feeling of buying something, at least in my case. That may or may not be true for you, but I know when I do something on the budget that's incorrect, the amount of guilt that I have for that just totally outweighs any other feeling. So I make sure I stay out of that world, and I go back to making sure I stay within the budget. The third one, depending on how you spend money, could or could not work for you. You could just carry cash and lose the credit cards. And I don't mean like get rid of the credit cards, but I mean don't actively carry them with you. If you only have $20 or $30 with you at a time, you can't go crazy spending money. You are basically limiting your ability to purchase things. So if you see something and, okay, I spent my $30 and now I have the rest of the day and I don't have any money, you're not going to be able to do any more impulse purchases, and your brain's going to start getting trained on trying to make that dollar last longer. This one has worked for me. I'm not a big fan of carrying cash because I just spend cash like crazy. I don't know why it is, but when I have cash in my hand, I need to spend it. So for me, I use credit cards, but you could use credit cards that are gift cards. So you go through and automatically limit things like that. They're reloadable usually. So you could kind of just load it up with, let's say, $100 a month, and then you have that. Or you can just go through and gift cards are another way. There's lots of different ways to kind of limit what your ability to purchase is. But being able to do that is a really good way of kind of controlling that habit, because if you can't do something or you don't have access to something, you literally just can't do it, and it stops that impulse from wanting to reoccur. Another one is try to figure out your reason why you want to buy something. Like, as I said, I love tech stuff. I like being able to make sure that I have tech stuff in case of failures, in case I run into a problem, whatever. Rarely, and I'm talking about very rarely, has the tech stuff that I had really been necessary or come in. I have things that are sitting in boxes. I'm looking at them right now. I have things that are brand new that have never been touched with hopes of covering some unforeseen problem down the road. Think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. For me, going through and looking at an Amazon wish list is a much better way of doing something. This kind of goes to that dopamine release, because I'm a huge Amazon shopper. I browse Amazon pretty much every day, usually multiple times a day. Jeff Bezos, if you're listening, you can sponsor this podcast. That would be awesome. But really, what we're looking at here is I go through, I browse Amazon, I find stuff I really like, and then I put it on a wish list. And then every so often, I'll go through and browse that wish list. And there's some days where I'm like, what was I thinking? Where this was a thought that entered my mind that I might want this thing. And that happens pretty often. I go through that wish list probably twice every like 3 to 4 months. So like maybe once a month, I'll go through that wish list and just kind of prune it and see what are the things that I actually wanted. What are the things that were just total random things that entered my brain. And then I had to get them out somehow. So I added them to a wish list. I'd say 90% of the things that get entered onto my Amazon wish list eventually disappear and get deleted out of there. But that's completely up to you. When I say that I want things that cover situations that weren't really going to happen, that cable that I was talking about towards the beginning of the podcast, that cable, basically I can use it to charge my phone from 0 to 50% in a half hour, which sounds awesome. I've literally never needed to do that. So it's, again, a completely unnecessary solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And I love the idea of being able to do it, and talking about it right now really makes me want to go get that cable. But again, I'm not going to, because the situation that I'm fantasizing about in my head doesn't really happen. And if you can really kind of understand why you're thinking about things and look for that reason for why you want to buy, even if it's as stupid as wanting to plan for things like I do, where there are problems that are not going to happen. But if you can set realistic goals of what that's going on with, you can really start understanding why you do what you do, and then you can control what you do. So, number 5, we're going to set some goals. Does the purchase work towards or against the goals that you're setting? So my goal right now for my personal budget is to make sure I don't spend over $200. I have $25 left right now. If I were to spend $10 on a cable that I really want, but I don't need, it doesn't go towards that goal. It hurts my goal because now I'm $15 and I need to get through a weekend on $15. Getting through a weekend on $25 is much more likely than $15. So I'm going to hold off and I'm going to wait, and I'll be okay. I'm a big boy. I can do without a cable. And again, if I really do find that I want it, I can come back to it next month. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to hurt for it over a 2 or 3 week stretch here. All right. Another thing is, what does that item actually add to your life? So again, that cable, I'm sorry I'm going back to that example, but that's just what's in my head right now. But if we're looking at what it adds to my life, right now it adds absolutely nothing. It adds a feeling that I'm able to charge my phone faster, which is not an eventuality that I have. And that's really it. It just adds the feeling of, hey, I got it, which is that dopamine release, which I don't need. And I honestly don't actually want. Because if I continue to chase that dopamine release, I'm training my brain that that's a good thing, that's a wanted thing, and that's something that I need, when it's not. So if that item that you want doesn't add anything to your life other than that feeling of being good right away, you got to let it go. And I know that's really hard in the moment because you're not thinking clearly. And I totally get that. But really, it doesn't add anything actual to your life other than that momentary release. And it's something that you need to kind of just let go of, or just come back to a later day to see if it actually does impact your life. Number 7 would be to reward yourself for staying within the budget. Let's just say you have a budget of $100 for the month and you did not spend it all. So you at the end of the month, you had a little bit of a surplus. You had a little bit of money left over. Well, maybe the next month you get $125 because you, the rock star that you are, did not spend your budget. So now you have a little bit extra money to spend. And you know what? The next month, you don't get to repeat that. You go back to the $100, but maybe the month after that, you can reward yourself again. Just going ahead and giving small rewards is a really good incentive to break a habit. The reward cannot be so big that it overshadows everything else. It needs to be a small reward and a reachable reward. So if you're spending $100 a month on yourself, a $25 reward is 25% of your budget. It's a really large percentage, but in dollar amounts, it's not a massive number. So I'd be comfortable with something like that. I've tried this in the past. This personally does not work that well for me. It'll work for a month and then I'll realize, okay, I got the money. Awesome. I'll spend it. And then my really goal was to get that one-time extra money and then I'm done. But I've talked to people and this really does work for some of my friends. So if this is something that works for you, go for it. Another way, and I'm sorry I'm going to geek out a little bit here, number 8 is to not give yourself the ability to spend money. There are ways to block websites that you spend money on from your browser. So you can go in, you can edit what's called DNS settings on your computer or even on your router, and you can block your ability to actually get to the websites. So if I wanted to go to Amazon.com, it literally would not load. It would say page cannot be found. And if you set it up on your router, you can do it for all the devices connected to your Wi-Fi. So I'm a big watch TV, browse Amazon kind of guy. Sorry, Jeff Bezos, sponsor us. But if that's something that you're looking for, you can block that at its source and it goes away. If you need help on doing so, I can provide links. I can provide personal assistance, whatever you need, if that's something that's a problem for you. On the low-tech end of things, if you drive past, like, let's say a mall or a store that you really love every day coming home from work, and you find that you spend a lot of money from there, drive somewhere else. Go a different route. There's more than one way to get to places. So if I drove past the Apple store every day, let's say, or the Microsoft store, or just a tech store in general, let's say Best Buy. If I drove past Best Buy every day and it was tempting me and I stopped in there and spent money every few days or once a month and I spent a lot of money, you know what I would do? I'd just go a different way. The extra money I'm going to spend on gas or electricity, depending on your car choice, is going to be minuscule compared to what impulse spending can do to your life. So that's another way, low-tech way, to just give yourself and block yourself out of the ability to spend money. And then my final suggestion would be to practice. Both of you need to be fully engaged in this to go ahead and break the habit. You cannot have excuses and you have to work at it every day. It sounds like a terrible piece of advice, but the best thing that I've done, and I think Danielle's would agree with this for our budget, is to just blindly follow what we've set up. There's a reason, there's a goal set out, and we have to practice it every day. There is not a day that goes by that we don't open up our budget and take a look at it and see where we're at. Danielle even told me today she saw that I was in the budget and she wondered what I was doing in there because she knew I didn't have that much money. And I was just checking to see how much I had to see if I could get that cable or not. So it's a practice thing where we go in, look at it, understand the numbers, understand where we're at and where we want to be. It's maybe not the best piece of advice, but practice really does help you be able to control the habit, recognize the patterns, and be able to break the habit. So hopefully that was able to help you. If not, just shoot us another email back. I'd love to talk to you more. And if you have any questions out there, other listeners, please just shoot them in. You can go to budgetcouple.com and then click on our contact form and it'll go right to my personal email address. And I'd love to hear from you and see if you have any budgeting issues. And just remember, all the budgeting stuff we do, we take your problem and adapt it to our personal lives of what we would do in your situation. So You may not be getting the greatest advice in the world out there, but we're really trying to personalize it and take a look at what we would do in your situation so that we can really make sure we understand where you're coming from. So again, if you have questions, just shoot them out to us and we'd love to hear you. Otherwise, have a fantastic day and we'll see you on our next episode. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.